Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Press Play Lifestyle Inspired podcast, where we do interviews with lovely people like Miss Pamela here on topics that help the listeners, that's you, find the resources, tools, and support that they need to be their best inspired selves. So how are you today, Pamela?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I know you're really busy, so I always am so appreciative of the time people share with me. And so I find so much of the work that you're doing to be just the work period to be very inspiring. And I really wanted to dig in. So why don't you give everyone a quick intro about yourself and like what business you're doing, and then I have lots of exciting questions to ask you.
Okay, so I'm a business and lifestyle strategist, and I work with my clients, some of which are business owners and entrepreneurs, others are building nonprofits, and some are working in the government and public sector to build their business or their organization around what they do best, which I call their zone of genius. And I help them focus on their strengths so that they can automate, delegate, and eliminate the rest. I have people that work with me in groups and individually, and we always try to keep everything joy-centered in the work that I do.
So could you tell me one of the stories that's super great that leads into a lot of other things for you was that you said you're a believer in following your joy, and then you just mentioned joy again there. So could you kind of tell us what that means to you, a believer in following your joy, and how that's shown up for you in your life?
So this may sound silly, but if you've ever seen the musical Rent, I've loved the song that starts 525,600 minutes since I was in college. I used to blast it in the shower and sing it, and I can't sing. And I rarely do because I can't. But in the shower, I would sing that song. And it's always resonated with me that we all have the same amount of time in the day, but it's what we do with it that makes a difference. And I'm a relatively happy person by nature, and I like to have fun. I like to work hard and play hard. And I find that when I'm doing something that makes me happy, good results follow. Always growing up in my life, my dad, my grandfather, they would always say to me, just be happy. And my grandfather was really great about not letting the small stuff get to him in a way that I think people strive to be. He just naturally was able to achieve that goal. So I've always tried to follow the things that bring me joy in life so that the results that follow are as best as possible. We can't control everything. We all have fears. We all have anxieties. We all have bad things happen, unfortunately, from time to time, but it's how we handle them that makes the difference.
Yeah, that's awesome. My dad used to have similar advice. His was always about like, he said, change how you're thinking and you'll change how it changes happening. Because he was like, you're not sick unless you decide you're going to be really sick. He used to always say stuff like that. And he was a very happy, like joyous guy, just kind of by nature, very passionate person. So that's cool that you got like that kind of the love of joy to be passed down. What a unique legacy your parent or your grandparents and your parents left you. That's beautiful.
Thank
So
you.
where has following joy led you?
Well, it's led me a lot of different places. It's led me in places where I wasn't so joyful. I've loved helping people and advocating for issues. So I started my career in public policy and government relations. Excuse me, I'm getting tongue-tied here. And I had some great jobs. I loved them. I did really solid work. But some of the stereotypes about politics are true and some are not. But when you get in the weeds at higher level positions like I've been, you see all sides. And it's very hard to focus on why you're there to do what you're doing. And it's something I've kept my foot in all my life, still to this day. But I've also gotten burnt out and felt like once I had my daughter and then later my son, I really couldn't focus on them. And that's what I wanted to do. I never knew. I always thought I would be one of those people that like had a nanny like full time and was home for my kids, but worked because I was so career driven and ambitious. But as soon as I met Mallory, that's my daughter, everything changed. She's this tiny, beautiful, precious person who I wanted to be with as much as possible. So that inspired me to try to find another way. And so I would propose to my bosses ways to telework as much as possible and do different things that were creative, and it worked and it helped. But one day after my son, who's my second child, was born, my husband had an opportunity for a job abroad. And we'd had lots of conversations back and forth about doing this or not doing this. And to be totally honest, I was petrified, as I'm very close to my family and I have a lot of friends. And I really didn't know if I could do this or wanted to do this. But my husband said to me one day when this one opportunity that we ultimately took came around, he said, you know, you can keep working full time and seeing your kids for a few minutes in the morning and maybe an hour at night and being exhausted on the weekends. Or you can take this opportunity to step back and try something different, let me go, and you can spend all of your time with our son who is still not in school yet and only 1 year old. And that is what sealed the deal. I said, I'm going to follow the joy and be with my children and my family. So at that point, we moved to Brazil, which was a big transition for me in all areas of my life.
Well, yeah, that's like another country, another culture, right? I like crazy difference.
It is.
Ah, so are you still in Brazil?
No, we're now back in Maryland where I grew up and where we started when we were married. But we were in Brazil for a year and my husband had a great opportunity there. We were able to live in Rio de Janeiro and I was able to go to the markets and the beach and Starbucks, which my son at the time called the muffin shop because I would buy him big muffins when I got my coffee. And we would enjoy, you know, our time and just spend time walking around all of the streets of Rio as a family on the weekends. And it really gave me that work-life balance that I always wanted because honestly, I wasn't working a whole lot. I took on some consulting. That's how I started consulting as it came my way. But I was able to spend more time with my husband and my children. And I was able to cook more and really explore new culture and new people. And it was interesting, exciting, scary, new, all these different things. But it opened doors to me realizing that you can do something different with your life. You don't have to follow this prescribed script that so many people do. Even when some people think you're crazy, and even if you're doubting yourself, sometimes doing something drastically different can really lead to the best rewards. And for me, that really was true. We miss Brazil all the time. But during the time that we lived there, Zika had just flared up. And there were some other illnesses that are a bit extreme that you really don't want to expose your children to for long if you don't have to. So we did decide to cut that short after a year, but was a year that I will never forget.
Oh, that's wonderful. So how's the adjustment coming home? Was it a good change or was it another adjustment like the same way?
That's an excellent question. And honestly, people sometimes in my life think that I'm exaggerating when I say this, which I'm not. It was really hard to come back because it almost was like going back in time living in Brazil. Things were simpler. You would go to a grocery store, which was like very small, and there would be one or two choices of what you were looking to buy, which was amazing because in this society, in the United States at least, I see decision fatigue everywhere. I just went to Target this morning to get some things and I wanted to buy a steam mop. And to tell you how many minutes I spent in that aisle looking at choices, it stressed me out. So I find that when you have like fewer choices, which I use some of this in my business too, which is interesting. I tell people don't have 1,000 offers, just have a couple, one or two. You know, so many choices can really stress you out. So coming back from Rio and going to stores like Target and going out to the grocery store and seeing so many different packaged foods, because we ate very clean there just naturally, was really stressful. And also just missing the beauty of the nature around me. And like fruit tasted sweet and had different flavors there, much more than what you find here because it was organic, even though they didn't call it organic, and you got it really local. And there was just a whole nother level of yum when you took a bite. So all of those little things really did add up. And the expat community there was amazing. So everybody who was working there really knew that they needed each other. So I found a Facebook group. It's how I actually started to learn how to use social media besides, you know, keeping up with friends, and ended up meeting some wonderful people who will be friends for the rest of my life. I love them dearly. And they're the kind of people that whether you talk to them all the time or once in a while, you can reconnect and pick up where you left off. And they're amazingly interesting in ways that you can't even imagine when you don't live all over the world. So I've missed all of that. And it's a lot, but it's nice to be close to family. And everyone will tell you, I think, when they've gone away and come back and have a family, that like nothing trumps that, but it doesn't take away from the experiences that you can have when you try something new.
Yeah, I remember my friend Polly when she went back to Brazil for good, right, for the end of her time here. And she lives with us for 2 years. The shock, the culture shock was she was just shocked that she was shocked, right? Going home because she'd left a young lady and went back having helped raise 4 kids for 2 years, right?
Right.
It's such a huge difference. And she was very self-sufficient, and she was like cleaning and helping her family, and people like, what happened to you? And she's just like, what happened to you? It was for her, it felt like going back in time the other way. Like she
Right.
went home and there was none of the conveniences. She like, and the food taste, she's like, food tastes better, safe things. I
Hmm.
remember saying, why do you put sugar in your milk? It
Oh
tastes
yeah,
disgusting. She's
it
like,
does.
there's sugar in your milk and in your bread. Like, who does that? I'm like, really? I thought that's just how it came. So it was a adjustment, both like coming, you would think the language and stuff, but it's just everything you do. Like when she showers like 3 times a day. I'm like, we live in Wisconsin. You're gonna die. You shower all the time like that. She's like, it's hot where we are. Like you have to. You're wet. You know. So it's
You
just
are.
very very fun and interesting to hear a different perspective. Um, so that kind of led you to, following your joy, learning all these things, coming back, doing some consulting. You talked about, I believe, some information you shared with me. You said you do a lot of business and lifestyle strategy. Could you just kind of describe what that means to you?
Absolutely. So I didn't really want to call myself a coach, and I didn't think a consultant was specific enough. But what I found that I've been doing more than not with my clients is providing them ideas and action plans so that they can take their dreams and make them happen. And in reality, when you look at a virtual assistant, or you look at a coach, or you look at a consultant, those are very broad categories. And most often you'll find generalists, but you'll also find people that have an area that's really their area of expertise, their zone of genius. And what I've found is that I'm very successful in helping the people that I work with build their dream lifestyle based on building the work that they want to do to achieve that dream lifestyle. Because it's not something that is cookie cutter. I mean, you'll see millions of opportunities out there, especially when you're on social media and a lot of different groups, about 10 steps to achieve 6 figures, or the 3 things you need to do to get visible and get clients knocking on your door. And some of them are great strategies and some of them work, but they don't all work for everyone. And I have so many ideas. Some of my clients have called me the queen of ideas. I can sit here and just come up with ideas when we're talking about something you're trying to figure out, most of the time, as long as I've gotten sleep, like so much that it will overwhelm you. But I also have found that I'm really strong at taking those ideas and saying, what should we do next? Because I can dream at the hills. I can tell you something that looks amazing, but then how do we get there? How do we make it happen? And I think what's important is taking that next step, because once you take that next step, a domino effect will eventually happen. You'll gain momentum. But sometimes the step that you take leads you in a different path. When I started in Brazil, I just picked up some random work. It was consulting work. And then when I was in Florida and I started to advertise my services, I said I was a business efficiency consultant. I've called myself a lot of different things. And I took on all kinds of clients. I did graphic design, I did research, anything you wanted to pay me for. If I could do it from home and I had time, I did it because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I loved it. And then I realized little by little, every client I took on, no matter what I was there, excuse me, what I was there for, I started giving them my ideas. I started giving them my strategy. And I had one client say, "Oh my God, I love your brain." And I was like, "Well, thank you." And I was doing graphic design and sales for her. And little by little, the relationship evolved. And so I realized, wait a minute, this is what I need to build my business on. And I found it to be rewarding and exciting and fun. And it helps other people live their dream lifestyle, whether it's the same as mine or different, it doesn't matter, because it's all about having happier people in this world, I think.
Yeah, I love that. So I think I not that you need me to agree, but I love the perspective that, I mean, there are a lot of great programs out there, and I love that you were very careful with your word choice and you said opportunities, because they are something that did probably work for that person. It's not like people are being disingenuous, but we are all so different. And
Right.
just because like I have 4 kids. One of my children has some special needs. There's all kinds of things going on in my life. Just because what I did work for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you with 2 kids living in another state with different support systems. So
Mhm.
I think that giving people like, look, these are some frameworks I have, but let's see how these frameworks can work for you is a smart, it's a great way to validate people too, that their ideas weren't wrong. They just might have needed structure around their idea.
Exactly. And the other thing I tell people is just because I give you an idea, it may not work for you and you may hate it. And that's great because sometimes that visceral negative reaction tells us, let's go in a different one. And
Yeah,
it's more like figuring out that right fit for you, knowing when you can kind of breathe easier and think clearer and move in a direction with ease rather than feeling like you're up against something like hitting a brick wall.
totally see where you're going from. So that probably led you to create the Best Life and Business, like the Best Lab program, I would assume.
Yes. So what's really interesting is I've done a couple different things. I had a remote job leads service that I started several years ago because I found so many opportunities that were out there. And I always saw people asking, how do you find them? And so I started a business around helping people find those opportunities and helping people hire them. And it's all been under my main business. It doesn't matter. Names don't matter. But what does matter is that I needed help. So I put out an ad to hire someone to help me with that part of my business. And I was inundated with applications, but one person who I met, whose name is Erin, who lives in New Zealand, she and I clicked on our first meeting. And I didn't realize, and I wasn't thinking about the time zone when we were talking, but she had gotten up at like 5 a.m. to have this interview with me. So, as the meeting's going on, she's perking up and I'm realizing, oh, wait a minute, the time's different
It's
because
like
it came up in
5 in the morning.
conversation.
She's probably exhausted.
Exactly. And so I realized, wow, this woman has a work ethic. And on top of it, her personality and her intelligence and her creativity really shone through. And I could tell from interviewing her that I really liked her and that I wanted to work with her. But I basically told her on the spot that I wasn't hiring her because if I did, she was going to quit on me because it was to research jobs. It wasn't exciting. It was fine. It's a great opportunity for a certain person, but not for her. So I said, you're not getting this job, but I need you to give me a little time to figure out how I can bring you into my business, and I'm going to get back to you. It drove me crazy. And about a week later, I called her and I said, I don't know what it is, but I'm going to just start paying you something and we're going to work together because I don't want you to give up your time somewhere else. Someone's going to grab you. I'm grabbing you. So we started working together. I feel like it's like years ago now. It might have only been a year and a half, 2 years, but it feels like forever. She's one of those people in my life. And we became fast friends. And we built a lot of great programs together for my business. And not too long ago, once we moved to Maryland, which was just this past summer, Erin and I spoke and I said, I think we need to rebrand because I've been doing so many different things, but none of them feel authentic to the work we're really doing with our clients. So I want the web presence to now catch up to the work we're really doing. And I want the brand to do the same. And so we took our group mastermind program and we made some changes to it and made it evolve into more of strategic a strategy consulting plus mastermind program and decided we needed to call everything something different. So Best Life and Business was born because that's what we're trying to help people achieve. And the Best Lab is what we call it for short because life and business has LAB in it. And we kind of thought that was cool, just in case you're not looking at the letters. And so what we're doing is creating several different labs so that whether you're just starting off and creating your business or you're accelerating it and growing with systems or you're delegating with team, you have the right space to work with us in a group. And that's where we are today. So Erin and I are doing it together. And what's wonderful is that when you work with us, you have the choice of working with both of us or either of us and getting our different perspectives. And while we have many things in common, we also have very different perspectives. So it's kind of unique because a lot of times when you hire someone, you hire one person. So this gives our clients a different, unique ability to have two consultants and strategists on their team.
That's awesome. That sounds super fun. So one other thing I wanted to get in there before we finish up was you'd also talked about like within sort of all of those products that you provide and services that you're providing, there's a method that you do suggest people can use to sort of help them empower their zone of genius or something like that. So could you tell me a little bit? I think you called it ADE. Was that?
It's ATE. It's called
Okay.
the eight method. And my method is very simple. It's focus on what you do best, automate, delegate, and eliminate the rest. So I work with you to make sure that you're building your best life in business around your zone of genius. Obviously, you're following joy, right? And then you have to do something with the rest of it because there's always more to do than what you love and what you excel at. So what do you do with it? Well, we strategically look at how you're spending your time, what brings you joy, what's making you the most money, and then take the rest of it and we automate it with systems, delegate through outsourcing to people who their zone of genius is different from your own, and then eliminate. Because sometimes in the process of building your best life and building a business, there's extra stuff that you start to do along the way. And you don't even know why you're doing it anymore, but it becomes a part of your routine. So at a certain point, it's really good to clean house, just like cleaning your closet.
Well, that's awesome. It sounds like a great program. So are there any words of wisdom that you would like to leave with the audience before we close up shop today?
I would say just be honest with yourself. Look at how you're spending your time because we really do all have the same amount of time in every single day. And make sure that you are doing something, even if it's small every day, that really brings you joy so that you can follow that direction and build that lifestyle eventually that brings you a whole lot more joy than maybe where you start. But don't get intimidated by that vision at the end because it's a process. And when you see people out there who look like they are living their best life, sometimes they totally are, and that's amazing. And sometimes they're not. But it doesn't really matter because it's about you. So just be true to you and true to your heart and follow that joy every single day as much as you can, because that's what's going to get you the best outcome, at least from my experience.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Just for the rest of the audience, remember that we don't charge any of the people that we interview. So if you would like to support our podcast, you can go to anchor.fm at Press Play Inspired, and there's a big old support button. And there's plans as small as 99 cents a month, which would get me not a cup of coffee, but it will make me smile and bring me some joy. So um, I am so thankful that you took the time, Pamela. It's too bad we couldn't have scheduled it smartly and had Erin come on as well. It sounds like she's a huge part of your move forward success. But I do thank you for your time, and hopefully we can talk again in the future.
I would love to. I'm sure Erin would welcome the opportunity to join us. And thank you again for this opportunity.
You're welcome. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.